a lot of the stuff I was doing was not a formal full-time role that a company offered me. It
Okay.
was like permissionless. Like I started my own podcast and then grew into like an events company. Like no one told me to do that. No one was paying me. We had a Patreon making like $300 a month or something like that. So not to flex on your audience, but we were raking it in. And I learned so much from that experience. I talked to a civic leader, a business leader in Milwaukee every single week for probably 150 straight weeks or something like that. We did an episode every single week. We put on events in the community, self-taught audio engineer, learned publishing, promoting, all that stuff in the podcast space. No one told me to do that.
Welcome back to Rerouted, where we explore unique career paths to give you the tools you need to create the life you want. On today's episode, I sit down with Hagge and Kaila Lopez of the Per My Last Email podcast, Morning Brew Inc. production. We talk about so much, including their very different paths to Morning Brew, their insights into the early career job market, and some of their insights from hosting a career podcast. I've been listening to the Per My Last Email podcast for about 2 years, highly recommend it, and had so much fun talking with them both on today's episode. So let's get into it. Can you both give me an overview of your current roles at Morning Brew, what you're doing?
Yeah, you want to start?
Sure. Thanks for having us. Really excited to be here. I'm Kyle Hagge. I'm Chief of Staff at Morning Brew Inc. Morning Brew Inc. is a digital media company. We own and operate 20 plus franchises, everything from podcasts to YouTube shows to newsletters and everything in between. I've been Chief of Staff for 2 years now to our CEO. And prior to that, I was on a team called Morning Brew Learning. We were building mini MBA courses for our audience, and that's where I had the distinct pleasure of meeting and working with Kaila.
I am Kaila Lopez. I'm the Director of Consumer Revenue here at Morning Brew Inc. And my job is kind of like random special projects that have started as experiments and have developed into business lines. So I work on smaller projects that require consumer finances instead of like the normal way we make money, which is through businesses. So example of that would be consumer live events, which are located in the city, affiliate product recommendations, games, products, and merch. So yeah, doing a lot of very different things, and been doing that for 2 years. Before that, I was the Director of Content on Morning Brew Learning.
All right. So I acknowledge this is a larger question for you both, but you ended up in similar places coming to Morning Brew, working together a lot, but you came from very, very different backgrounds. So could you both just, and maybe Kaila, we can start with you, walk through your early career for what you did after undergrad to kind of up until you came to Morning Brew?
Great. Okay, let's see. Let's start from the beginning. So I was born in Virginia. No, just
Were you born in Virginia? Oh, wow. Holy shit.
Very nice.
So I went to Tulane for international business. So I was part of a dual degree program where I was required to get a degree from the business school and from the liberal arts school. And so my focus was political econ and business management. But part of the international business portion of that was that I was required to study abroad for 1 year and to take language classes every semester, all 4 years. So my language was Portuguese. I studied abroad in Brazil. I was really excited about international business. And so when I came back from study abroad, I did an internship at Goldman doing sales and trading, primarily focused on Latin American equities, which was really interesting. It was kind of it was a shift versus what I had been doing at college and what I thought I wanted to do. And so I thought, let's kind of see where that goes. So I ended up in equity research at Deutsche Bank doing first Latin American banks and then Latin American retailers. And so that was a really interesting time. I realized I loved a lot of stuff. Like I loved the Spanish, Portuguese, all of that. I thought that was very interesting. I loved investigating businesses. What I didn't love was the environment that I was working in. And I didn't love the like banking culture. So I then said, how do I do what I like to do and like pivot a little bit, keeping those things consistent? So I ended up finding an editorial position at CV Insights, which does startup research. So I was still researching businesses. They were just much smaller. They weren't public. It was more about emerging trends in the startup space. I did that for 3 years, really loved it, and then ended up taking that like editor through line and becoming the lead editor for Morning Brew Learning 3 years later. And then that's where we are.
And now you're on a couch.
And now it's been 5 years. Yeah.
Doing a podcast.
With CB Insights, Were there skills that you were using from your previous work at Deutsche Bank, or was it like a total 180, but just in the same kind of like interest zone?
Well, so yeah, when I was in equity research, I was doing not a lot besides like the very baseline entry level grunt work. So everything was different in that I was doing like it was like how fast can I put number from PDF into Excel? So, I was doing a lot of more like long form reading during like off hours. So that was a little consistent. My analyst was not a native English speaker. And so I did spend a lot of time editing his work and becoming an editor at CB Insights. That was kind of the through line there. And that's something I really enjoyed. And yeah, I think once you have those like research skills, it was useful. But I think that was pretty much the only stuff that was consistent. Everything else was completely different.
Kaila did banking. I decided I wanted to do something positive for the world. So
Wow.
I did AmeriCorps for 2 years after undergrad. I went to University of Minnesota. I did liberal arts, humanities, like political science and philosophy. Did AmeriCorps for 2 years, and I would say from the time I graduated undergrad for then about, what is that, 5.5, 6 years, I would say that period in my career was super high experimentation. And so I think my advice to your audience is when you're young, you really want to find the best fit career, the best fit job, the best fit skills. And the best way to do that is to actually just do a bunch of stuff and see how you react and respond to those things. And you'll discover things you thought you liked, you actually do them and you hate, and vice versa. So I did AmeriCorps for 2 years. I got my master's degree in political science. I started my own small podcasting media company in Milwaukee. I then got into podcasting a little more and was working with the innovator in residence at Marquette University. I did some freelance things for a civic tech company, started TEDx Marquette U, so did some public speaking and whatever you want to call TED. And so, like, again, really, really high experimentation, doing a lot of things, figuring out what I liked, what I was good at. And it was really a valuable 6 years. And I would say probably the most broad 6 years like of my life. I really was just experimenting and doing a lot of different things. And then when I came to Morning Brew, I would say our first role when we were building these mini MBA courses was kind of taking all of those dots that I'd gathered over the previous 6 years and connecting them. And we worked, like, the people that took our courses came from all over. They were in nonprofits, in for-profits, in different industries, different roles. And me, I think having a broad set of experiences allowed me to relate to them in a way that I just wouldn't have if I didn't have those experiences. And I think really helped make the program as dynamic as it was. And then now I'd say the last, 2 years as chief of staff, the role itself is very broad, but I have been going deeper into, really enjoying the role and really getting good at one thing instead of expanding and continuing to do so many different things.
All right. I think there's a really interesting contrast between the both of you, not just in the fact that Kyle, you were saving the world, Kaila, you were selling the world, but
Yes.
just in the fact
That's
that
the main one. Good and evil, I would say.
Yes,
Love that.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, now you're both here, so what does that really say? But I
Yeah.
will say there's an interesting contrast where I know that for, at least now, maybe it looked a little bit different, but for IB recruiting, there's very much you have to grind for like your 3-4 years straight. 2 years straight, I guess, technically. But it's very, very focused. And then, Kayla, you came up, you did IB, did the hell for a little bit, and then you eventually pivoted, where Kyle, you were kind of bounced around a lot more in your early career.
100%.
I just think that's a really interesting contrast. And I do want to ask as well, and I feel privileged to ask you because you run a career podcast and you think about this a lot. I'm wondering, do you think that that method is applicable right now with the tight market that college new grads are facing? Is that something where, and it's a question I ask myself as I host a podcast on nonlinear careers, but we're seeing a lot of new grads and people not having as many choices or options or finding those options more difficult. Do you think that that's still an approach that you would take if you found yourself in this job market right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a first crack at this one, and then Kayla, you can go. I mean, I think it's a great question, and to give a little clarity around my background, a lot of the stuff I was doing was not a formal full-time role that a company offered me. It
Okay.
was like permissionless. Like, I started my own podcast and then grew into like an events company. Like, no one told me to do that. No one was paying me. We had a Patreon making like $300 a month or something like that. So not to flex on your audience, but we were raking it in. And I learned so much from that experience. I talked to a civic leader, a business leader in Milwaukee every single week for probably 150 straight weeks or something like that. We did an episode every single week. We put on events in the community, self-taught audio engineer, learned publishing, promoting, all that stuff in the podcast space. No one told me to do that. And so, yeah, I think getting a job after college maybe is just like step one, but I wouldn't say that your only way to learn new skills is through the job that you get, and your only way to go and collect all of these dots is through the job you get. The only way to figure out what you're good at, what you love to do, is through the job you get. If you have that mentality, that is where you're gonna, I think, get tripped up. It's never been easier in like the history of the world to experiment and try a ton of different things, because the tools like we're on right now, Riverside, you have a podcast. 100 years ago, you would need to have worked your way up to CBS to ever get on some sort of microphone. Now you don't have to. And so that would be my big takeaway for your audience is like, yeah, get a job and like learn the corporate world and start building confidence and skills, but don't let that be the only way to learn. And I think particularly when you're young, just start doing a bunch of stuff, start experimenting, create a podcast, create a blog on the internet, and that's where you'll pick up other skills that are important.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. And I think it's such a good point that right now, like bopping around and trying a bunch of different straight up 9 to 5 career paths within the first 5 years of your career is probably going to be a lot harder than it was even 10 years ago for us. And so one thing that if you know you want to be doing a lot of different things before you kind of settle on one career path, you can obviously do all the things that Kyle mentioned, but I would also look for a first job that has like a pretty robust team that can allow you to either stretch and try different functions, or will put you in different places like a rotational program, or something, like a larger company that kind of could allow you to pivot to different teams where you're not necessarily having to go out and sell yourself again. They already know that you're a good employee, that you're interesting, that you've got all this, stuff going for you, but you can then go from the marketing team maybe to the insights and analytics team and try that out at the same company. So that's my like 1B advice is if you really do want to bop around, do it in a safe way.
And like when you're at a company, they kind of have to talk to you. So you can message anyone and be like, hey, like, can I grab 30 minutes and learn what like a strategic finance analyst does? Like they'll probably say yes. And so use that time just to like start meeting people at your company, learning what they do. And again, trying to figure out what your best fit is through those means.
All right. I want to tie it into an insight I got from an earlier episode as well, maybe 5 episodes ago. It's an episode I did with a guy named Anish Ramurthy, and one of his big insights was that he did startup and learned that he really loved product management through pivoting from marketing to product within his own startup, and then was able to land a product role after. And I also say too, Kaila, on your point, I've also seen a lot of success with the 30-minute method, especially if you're privileged enough to be an intern, then nobody says no to you if you're in the right place. So yeah. Okay. So thank you both for those insights. I just wanted to expand on them if I possibly could, but you guys are too good. It's really difficult for me.
I would say not even interns. If you have also like a .edu email, that fucking, I would still wish I had one. You can do anything with that. People love helping. If you didn't have a .edu, we probably wouldn't be talking to you.
That's not true. I do agree. I think, it's like youth is wasted on the young, or whatever. It's like .edu emails or college students, because it's an in. People are much more willing to like, hear you out. I think that gets a lot harder when you're, 5, 10, 15 years into your career for a variety of reasons. One being that like, okay, why would I help you? I don't know who you are. And also like, I think personally, it gets harder to like flex that muscle of like, I might as well just ask, like, what do I have to lose? Like the stakes feel higher as you're like more cemented in your career. So I think especially for younger people, it's just like great to just kind of like, not to use a VC term, but like spray and pray, just like send out a bunch of feelers and kind of see what sticks. And I think that's a very, very useful tool at the beginning.
Okay. Very nice. All right. Let's move on. I want to know, and I started with Kaila last time, maybe I'll start with Kyle this time. What drew you both to, and this is actually kind of interesting, I'm glad I'm starting with Kyle here because you had a little bit more of a foray, but what drew you to media? And then maybe more specifically Morning Brew.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that right away, what we were doing when me and Kayla first started at Morning Brew, we were doing it in a media company, but I wouldn't say it was media.
Mm-hmm.
We were building mini courses as we talked about. So I'd say it was like online education. And that was really interesting to me, having come from an AmeriCorps background where I was actually teaching in a high school, having done some like digital media stuff, internet stuff myself. And then also my job title eventually was director of community, but community manager at the start. I really had seen the power of bringing people together in a community in a variety of different ways in that 6-year kind of experimentation window of my career. And so it kind of was this beautiful intersection of a lot of interests of mine right in the middle of the Venn diagram. So I was really interested in that education space. And then the Morning Brew thing, I honestly like didn't really know fully what Morning Brew was like back when it started. I think I discovered it through Twitter, maybe.
That sounds right.
Like I would see like a funny tweet, I'd be like, "Oh, Morning Brew's like hilarious," and then I started reading their newsletter, and I was like, "This is really good." But I was definitely not like a super fan, been there since day one. I just recognized like this is really an excellent company, and the product is so good. This seems like a fun adventure to go on. So that's what initially drew me to Morning Brew. And then, since being here and learning more about all of the different businesses we have, that's when I think I got really more interested in kind of digital media and actually what Morning Brew Inc. is doing. And so definitely initial interest, but it's only grown over time.
All right. Awesome. Kayla?
I can take the next one. So I think I kind of have a similar story in that I wasn't necessarily like, I want to be in media. When I was like, I've always loved writing and I've always loved creating content, even when I was little. I remember I was like 8 and people were like, you're either going to be a lawyer or a journalist, which I think I've said this on the pod before, but is a really nice way to tell like young kids that they're an asshole. Like, oh, you just love arguing. Like just eat the broccoli. But no. But so I've always loved writing and I've always thought like this is something I want to do. It never was like I want to be at a media company specifically. The way that it actually works that I ended up getting hired at Morning Brew was I was a day one fan. I think I probably started they launched 2015. I think I subscribed late 2016, pretty early to the game, and I was reading them every day. Same, CB Insights had a newsletter as well, so I was kind of reading those too. And then when I got the job at CB Insights, I was, building that newsletter, helping to build that newsletter and reading Morning Brew. And I remember the week I started at CB Insights, Alex Lieberman, the co-founder of Morning Brew and at that time the CEO, DM'd me on LinkedIn and was like, we have an editor position for one of the, maybe it was like Retail Brew or something. Would you like to apply? And I remember feeling so special. Like, wow, this is crazy. It was like 3 days after I started my new job. So I was like, thank you so much. I'm so honored. I love Morning Brew. I can't, but keep me in mind for the future. And then 6 months later, I got a similar DM from Alex that was like, hey, we have a new, publication, whatever. And then at that point I was close enough with the editor team that I mentioned it. I said, oh my God, I love Morning Brew. And the CEO to apply, and they were like, oh yeah, he does this to all of us. So he had found a newsletter that he had respected and basically took all the editors and would DM them every time a new position opened up.
Dude's poaching talent.
He did
Wow.
that with I think it was us and maybe Cheddar or
That's
Corn.
so
There was
funny.
a few of them that he would like reach out to back when he didn't have, like an HR or anything. It was him that was doing leads. Finally, it was like he reached out. It was like probably like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times he had done this. And we were like, no, thanks, but see you next time. See you in 6 months or whatever. And I got one that I liked and applied and ended up getting it. And that's how I came over. So that was a long-winded way of being like, I kind of fell into this, but I've always loved Morning Brew.
Okay. Have you guys seen that trend in other industries or in the past of that idea of like finding CB Insights was a company that he liked and then just wanted to grab editors from there? Is that a thing?
If
Definitely.
it's not, it should be.
I mean, it definitely is. Yeah.
Okay.
Like the correspondence between like Apple CEO and Adobe CEO that was like, hey dude, thought we weren't doing this. Coaching.
Yes.
So I think it's definitely a thing where if you find it's like the same way that MBAs can sometimes be used as filters, like, it's a Big Four always, hires MBAs from Harvard Business School because it's a filter. Harvard Business School, I trust them. They've already done the application process. They've filtered out who's good, quote unquote, supposedly. And so I feel more comfortable and confident hiring from them. So I totally understand poaching from a different company.
Yeah, and I think the lesson there is that the brand power and the brand recognition of the company you work for does matter, at least on the margins, especially early in your career. So if you can go work for a company that has this glow, your next position is going to be a lot easier to get, because either a recruiter will find you and assume competence, whether you're competent or not, TBD, or when you apply, they're going to look at that on the resume and be like, oh, they worked at Apple, they must be smart.
Yeah.
And so for the most part, that is a good filter. You will encounter people who have only fallen upwards from working at these big name corporations, and then you're like, how did you get here? And that's how. So it really is powerful, and it's definitely something to consider. And I think it's a good reminder, and Kaila and I talk about this a lot, like, I think our podcast is good. If we started this podcast ourselves without the backing of Morning Brew, we would have 1/100th, 1/1000th, 1/10,000th of the number of listeners that we have, because Morning Brew is trusted. It has distribution. It gives us the reputation and the glow to attract an audience. And I think it's really important in your career to remember that and to stay a little humble. Like, yeah, you do deserve the recognition for great work, but some of the recognition you're getting is based on the company you work for as well. And I've seen a few people maybe get a little too cocky and then think it's all them, and they go somewhere else, and they quickly realize that, yeah, they're talented, but they're not as talented as they thought. And it was in part because of the company too. So a good little sanity check there.
Today, I'd like to take a moment to talk about something close to my heart: the Engineers Without Borders UIUC chapter, a student-led humanitarian infrastructure organization. Our chapter is currently designing a vehicular bridge for a community of 30,000 in Malawi, a water distribution system for a community of 3,000 in Rwanda, and completing a preliminary engineering report for a new water sanitation center in Woodford County, Illinois. Our talented and passionate student members are responsible for assessing, designing, fundraising for, and implementing all of our projects. If you'd like to learn more or donate, check out ewbuiuc.org. That is ewbuiuc.org. Link in bio. Let's get back into the episode. All right. Now to reference one of your episodes, I actually used an episode. Yep, of course. I mean, come on. I told you guys I'm fans. But one of my favorite episodes that you've ever done is, I think it was like the 4 jobs you should have in your career.
Yeah.
And you talk about that idea of the big name. That is, I will say, one of my definitive favorites as well.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about more episodes later, but for right now, that's one of my favorites. Got to add that. Kaila, I have a question for you specifically here. So on the show in the past, you've described yourself as a recovering high achiever or perfectionist. I'm definitely paraphrasing there, but
no, you're right. Spot on.
You use that. Okay. Use that term recovering. And I want to know what that journey's looked like for you, and also why that is important for you to become somebody who's recovering from that.
Yeah.
Good question.
It was burnout that forced it. So I think for the first, I'd say 7 years of my career, I was very, very externally motivated. And I was very it didn't really matter where I was going. It just mattered that other people thought I was good at it. And I think being a perfectionist and I think I'm still high achieving, but being an element of that, I think.
A recovering high achiever. I'm a low achiever now. Yeah.
As a recovering perfectionist, I think the perfection is, for me, wasn't I want to do the best work I can. It's if there's a mistake, I will be viewed as a failure in the professional space, and my mom won't love me anymore. Obviously I'm joking a little, but it was super high stakes, higher stakes than it ever needed to be. Was I cannot believe I sent a peer an email with a typo. I'm the worst person to ever exist. And so for me, maintaining that feeling is really, really hard to do and still achieve. And so when you're spending so much time having this negative self-talk about the work that you're doing, you get really burnt out. For me, when Morning Brew Learning came to its conclusion, I was at the absolute limits of that behavior. I was working super hard on things that I was really excited about, but the stakes were so high and I felt myself slipping a little bit because we were trying to do so much, that it was I want to be a perfectionist. I need to be a perfectionist and I can't. And that was really, really hard on me. And so for me, the break when I switched into consumer revenue from being on content and Morning Brew Learning was like, I need to slow down. I need to like revisit why I'm feeling this way, and like, what do I need to do to like continue to work? Because I was feeling so sick of everything. And I love Morning Brew. I didn't want to like rage quit and start over. I like really wanted to continue to work here. So it was like 6 months where I was kind of like, why does this matter? Like, what do I want out of this? It was a very painful process, but ultimately I've like gotten back where I'm still high achieving and I still like strive for really, really good, but I'm not like, if it's not perfect, it is a statement on my personality and my like, I don't know, who I am. And it's still like a process, but I feel a lot better.
Okay. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And getting a little vulnerable today on the Rerouted podcast.
I wanted to
appreciate
hug
that.
you.
It's fine. It's not a big deal. We're good now.
We're good now.
Yes.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, I gotta ask. Obviously, the Rerouted X, the hosts of the Per My Last Email podcast, is gonna go wicked viral because, I mean, come on, it's us.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
how could it not?
how could it
Look
not?
at these. Look at these. Yeah.
I know, seriously. But I do want to ask you guys, how did Per My Last Email start? What's the story there?
Oh, it's a journey.
Okay.
So we were at Morning Brew Learning. We were trying to think of ways to just get a bigger top of funnel and get more people interested in the courses. And so one of the ideas was, let's do a newsletter. So we had a newsletter for a little bit that talked about career. One of the ideas was, let's do some sort of show, maybe that accompanies the newsletter in some way, where we're talking about a thing that happened in the news and how it might relate to your career. And so we went through that process of developing a show that really was focused on career, but would be the top of funnel for someone to buy a course at Morning Brew Learning. And that was a very iterative process. In the middle of that iterative process, the courses went away. So now there was nothing to go down funnel to sell.
The team was shut down.
Yeah, we shut that business unit down. So that does no longer exist at Morning Brew Inc. And so, but we were through the iterative process, and I think we had discovered that there's something here still for the show. And it initially started with just me talking about it and Kaila like helping script it and come up with the ideas.
Control room.
And then Kaila would be in the control room basically being like, Kyle's the dumbest MFer I've ever heard. What is he saying?
Scripted.
Yeah, I felt like I was in a trap of some sort. And basically, I think, we had worked together really closely and had developed a good chemistry. So then the idea was, well, let's put them together. And not that it's, it meant to be this like debate fake, like we always have to take different sides, just, we might have a different point of view on things. So then we started iterating with that process. And that's where we ended up with Per My Last Email. And it launched in 2024. And here we are at the beginning of 2026, still going strong.
Very nice. All right. I will say too, it's very funny to me, being a fan of the show, you saying, Kaila going behind and saying, man, what an idiot this guy is, because I think your guys' banter and the way that you conflict on your ideas of what, just in general, is one of the best parts of the show. One of the things that makes it so strong, personally.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, that's fun to know that
You gotta
before.
have some fun tension.
Yeah, if we didn't disagree, then what's the point?
I know.
Just have one person talking,
Exactly.
Yeah. I've tried to imitate that with my guests, but then it turns out that they just start to hate me when I just say, no, you're wrong and your career's bad. But that's neither here nor no.
We won't hate you if you say that. Well, yeah, I mean, you're a mechanical engineer.
Well, we have to trust.
Yeah, we have to trust you. Dude's building bridges or something. Yeah.
Well, then here's the thing then too. It's like, well, we both have career podcasts and I'm certainly a lot smaller than you guys. So who's the real winner here, I don't know, but it's kind of like the selling the world, saving the world, but but now we're all here. But okay. So I want to know too, since Per My Last Email has started, it's grown a lot. You guys had like a great year wrapped for 2025. You're very much still on the up and up. And I've kind of seen a little bit like now you guys are doing ads and it's very much tied with like your personal identities. So I want to know, outside of ads as well, as you've seen an increase in the as you've seen a growth of the show, have you seen a sort of increase in opportunities, either in your personal or just professionally?
Yeah, it's so I can't leave my house because of the paparazzi.
I know, it's
Of
wild.
course.
We're wild. Yeah. I bought like 7 black hats that go low and got the
Invest in sunglass stocks now because I'm buying them all.
Yeah, we're hanging out with Leo DiCaprio. It's crazy.
I mean, I think in terms of opportunities internally, I feel like it's it's a double-edged sword because it's a small company that we work for, and so I feel like I know pretty much everyone who works here. But there's also this element where some of my coworkers know more about me, vastly more about me, and how I
Mm.
approach work than I know about them.
They're like, Kayla, I heard your mom.
Like, I know this is your working style because of this episode. And I'm like, oh no, but like it's totally fine. Like I'm flexible. I'm not like if I just because I'm like this is the dumbest thing ever on the podcast. It doesn't mean if you
Hmm.
do it, I'm gonna be like this idiot. You know, like there's a lot more
You only
nuance and
you only
nuance.
tell me that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll say that on or off the pod
Yeah.
for Kyle, but like there's a total difference with like brand new people that I'm working with. And so that I think has been an interesting one. In terms of opportunities like externally, I feel like you probably, because of your LinkedIn profile as well, had a little bit more. I haven't felt like it's changed that much. I've had like 2 or 3 people come up to me in the wild, and that's it. So it's like I feel pretty normal.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I think to make this like universal, I don't think that. I mean, obviously, if you start anything, you probably want it to be as big as humanly possible within the niche that you're trying to go after. But realistically, like that isn't going to happen. And particularly, we'll use podcasts as an example. The stats on like how many people just persist past 3 episodes for a podcast, it's like 90% of podcasts don't make it past 3 episodes. So you're already in the top 10% of just like perseverance and grit. And then the other thing I think people have this like false belief that my podcast will be successful if it becomes the next Call Her Daddy, it becomes the next Joe Rogan. It has to do these insane numbers to find value. I just think that isn't true. And you have to get really clear for whatever you're doing, like what are you trying to get out of it? And for a podcast, I'm sure you've experienced this. Sometimes it's just the depth of the conversation you can have with someone that you're interested in is a reward in and of itself. If no one listened to this is just a lovely conversation. That's a win. The second thing is like you don't need to get everyone in the world. There's going to be someone, even one person that listens that is really inspired by something you said or your guests say, and it does affect their life. And I think that's a really, beautiful, positive feeling that you get to have. And then the third thing is like it really does just take one connection to change the trajectory of your career. So it's not about hitting everyone, it's about hitting the right person. An example of this from my life, I was hosting this very small podcast in Milwaukee that we talked about called Bridge the City. I was just doing that repeatedly. It was not massive by any means. And then the former CEO of a publicly traded company that was doing $1.6 billion in revenue by the time he retired, he was a Marquette alum. He went to Marquette and said, I want to start a podcast. Do you know anyone that's doing that I could talk to? And because I was a Marquette graduate and I actually started this podcast in grad school, they knew who I was. So they connected me to Chuck, was his name. That led to my full-time role. That led to a great mentor of mine. That led to me basically getting a mini MBA, learning from someone who had scaled a company from 50 million to 1.6 billion. Like I didn't need to hit everyone. I just needed one person at Marquette to know who I was to connect me. And so just the more shots on goal you put out into the universe, like one of them is going to hit, one of them is going to pay dividends. But I'm afraid that a lot of people never start because they think they have to get to scale, and it's so intimidating that they don't actually just try. And I think their life is, worse off for that. And that's why I applaud anyone, yourself included, who just starts a thing and goes after it with tenacity and keeps going. Because I think that's really what, life comes down to.
All right.
Got
Kyle,
on
I'm
a
gonna put it back.
soapbox there. You got me
No,
going, Nick. You got me going.
What are podcasts for if not to soapbox? I mean,
Exactly.
realistically,
So
that's
true.
what. Why would I have podcast guests on if I didn't want you to soapbox? That's why I want to
It's a
gain your
fact.
insights. I mean, that's what it's for. But I'm gonna ask you for some more insights, Kyle. Specifically, you shared on per my last email. You guys did a wonderful paternity maternity leave episode, and
Yeah.
Kyle, you've recently become a father. And
That's
congratulations, first off.
Thank you.
But I want to ask you, how, if at all, has your perspective on career, either generally and also for you personally, changed since you've become a father?
That's a great question. I mean, I think there's probably 2 elements that changed for me. The first being I do care a little bit more about money now than I did in the past. because it just feels like there's now other little baby that's relying on me to provide
Grades are expensive.
Weird.
formula and
Mhm.
daycare and all that. If I were in a situation in which I had two competing offers, I wouldn't just automatically take the one that made more money, but the weights of how I would assess each option have definitely changed a little bit since the birth of my daughter. And so money has become slightly more important than it was in the past. The second thing is you do have less time. And I don't know if other people, I won't say like, oh, that's a big misconception and people say you can do it all. I think most people are it's pretty obvious. You have less time. That's just a fact. And so you do have to cut things out. I think in the healthy version of my life, I'm cutting out the things I was doing that were just fucking pointless, like scrolling on Twitter for 3 hours. Like, if I just stop doing that, now I have 3 more hours to do the work or to hang out with my daughter. And life pretty much can continue going as normal. It's just I don't have as much of that like bullshit time. In the unhealthy version, I keep doing the BS. And now it's like, okay, like I'm seeing friends a little less. Maybe I have a little less bandwidth at work. Maybe I have a little less bandwidth for family. And I want to avoid those behaviors. And so I have had to cut things out of my life because I have a whole new responsibility that requires very intentional time. And I think I've done a decent job of maintaining the level of effort I want in my career and the level of effort I want with my family. And that's come at the expense of doing some, less BS. But that's definitely something that I'm watching out for as I go forward.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing that. So you guys, I know this might seem as a shocker to everyone, but you guys host a career podcast.
Yes,
and I think
true.
that something that I hear a lot from my guests is that they're very grateful that they've gained that because they don't think about their career a lot. They really enjoy the opportunity to pause and reflect. But you guys do that all the time in a lot of ways because you're on a career podcast. So I want to know, how have you developed that skill of thinking critically about both your own career, but then also just career in general as you've grown and worked through per my last email?
It's interesting. I think it's reps is the answer. Like it's the same way as like when you start tweeting, you start thinking in tweets. You're like, oh
Bad.
man,
Yeah,
when
I'm over that now, finally.
This movie, great, or whatever. Like, I don't know.
Is that what you're tweeting? Yeah, we got to work on your Twitter strategy, man.
Wake up next to this water bottle. And, like you're thinking in tweets. I think it's the same thing. But also, I mean, Morning Brew Learning was 3 years of building professional development courses. And so whether or not, like, I was thinking about my career when I was younger, in that I wanted to, like, continue to grow and I wanted to get promoted because, again, as the perfectionist, I viewed promotions and raises as facts, that proof that I was doing a good job. But we spent 3 years thinking about nothing but how other people can develop their careers. So whether that's like, learning more about how to be a new manager or having difficult conversations at work, we were developing content for that. And then, delivering that multiple times, in a row. And so that was kind of the like reps that we needed. And I'm not to speak for Kyle, but that I needed to kind of start thinking in that way. And now it's a little bit easier when I'm having a struggle at work or I hear about somebody else's struggle at work. I'm like, oh, is this universal? Like, this is interesting. Maybe we could talk about this more. So that's been my experience, at least.
Yeah, I think Kayla's spot on. It was reps for Morning Brew Learning. I mean, if you're building mini MBA courses, you're kind of getting a mini MBA yourself. And like a pretty intense one because you really know the material like the back of your hand. The second thing for me is I think just in general, like I said, I studied philosophy. I've always been like a reflective, I'm like much more introverted than people assume person. So I think I've just always thought about whatever it is that I'm doing on some sort of meta level. And so that's definitely been helpful. I think what is interesting about having a career podcast, and something that I hope it comes across in the podcast, is like we're also figuring things out ourselves. And I hope the podcast is relatable in that sense. And what I like about our show that I think is different than some other career podcasts is we're still in the game. Like we have full-time jobs at Morning Brew Inc. outside of hosting the podcast. The podcast is like this special, cool side thing. But most of the day, Kayla's thinking about consumer revenue. I'm thinking about chief of staffing. And like, that's where our main focus is. And so I hope it's relatable. We're still going through it. We're not perfect. We're sharing our reflections, things that went well, things that didn't. And I find that that's the one thing that creators can lose, that kind of loses touch with their audience, is you become a creator because you have this expertise in doing one thing. And then you become a full-time creator, and your expertise becomes like creating, but not necessarily like the doing and the being close enough to the ground to actually have relevant advice. And so we're in a cool position where like our full-time job is still our full-time job, and we're reflecting on that for the podcast. I hope that keeps it relatable. And I think if that went away, the show would definitely suffer.
Okay. I would definitely agree. I think that's one of the really strong parts of your show, is that it is very, very, you come into it with examples of things that happened maybe a few days ago. And I think that's really, it does make it really impactful. I agree. Even as, and of course, I have a very different perspective on what you guys do as somebody who's very, like, so early career, might not even be able to call it career, than somebody who's a bit deeper in. So I think that even for somebody who is not necessarily able to say, here's how I'm going to go talk to my manager tomorrow, it's very much still like, I can still get value from it. And I can see how
100%.
people
I mean,
who are
you're
in this.
so far ahead now.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. I
Thanks
wish
to
I was.
us, actually. So you're welcome.
No, just in general. Like, I wish I was doing this in undergrad. This is super dope.
There's definitely something to be said about the proliferation of the increase in access to so many different things, whether that be the opportunity like tools like Riverside, or be like a millionaire at 20 gurus. That very much like, I think there's a little bit, my generation, not to call you guys old, but my generation has had access to that stuff for a lot longer. So it's very much something where I think our perspective around what it takes to do something cool is a lot different, just by nature of the fact that we've grown up by seeing our parents, who very much are like Gen X, have the Gen X mindset. We've seen millennials online with the millennial mindset of
shout out
to
my people.
Yeah. We've seen the people who do what you did, Kyle, where it's very much like all of the different things and going to save the world. And then we see the millennial doomers, and we also see the gurus. So we've got a whole lot. We're so varied in so many different ways, because some of us just really want, I'm in engineering. A lot of us really want that like engineering desk job. A lot of us would rather die. Some of us are going to do startups, do podcasts. Like there's so much variety, I would say, in the way that my generation and my peers, just as other college students, perceive these things, because we've grown up with so much around us. Yeah, I'd love to come on Permanent and talk about it at some point, but I don't know. I'm joking.
Respect. Shoot your shot.
Yeah.
I'm glad we didn't grow up with the millionaire guru.
I think that would have really warped my brain in a negative way.
Yeah.
You know? I think I would have been like, well, what the hell, man? You want me to work for 40 years? Like,
I could get rich now.
Yeah. I think like when we're thinking about that change, like it is true that you guys have, I think it's a lot more in your face. I think also like our generation, people would leave college and go on a trillion different career paths. Like what you majored in communications, like what you're, now you're a software engineer at a vet tech company. There's so many different paths. And unfortunately, it's that we realize the variety of paths, like too late, for me at least. Like it took 5 years of seeing what our peers were doing to be like, oh, damn, I didn't even know you could do that. That's kind of cool. I think what's interesting and perhaps maybe overwhelming, not to put words in your generation's mouth, but like, is you have all of that immediately available to you, like in your face every time you scroll. Here's all the possibilities. And I think that could be really interesting and helpful, but also very overwhelming.
Yeah. I would definitely double down on the overwhelming. That's why a lot of people in my peers can't touch LinkedIn, because it's really overwhelming at times. Even just for like, I think there aren't a lot of people who want to do exactly what I do, but when it's something where it's like posting about like internships and stuff, people get really overwhelmed by that. So it's definitely a struggle as well.
But a question for you, is your friends, your peer group on TikTok?
Yeah, of course. Everyone's on TikTok.
How is LinkedIn overwhelming? I see TikTok adjacently on the subway, and I get off and I have a headache. I'm like, that to me is overwhelming.
I love it.
It's too much for me. LinkedIn's my safe space.
Yeah.
I love me some LinkedIn.
It's overwhelming in different ways, because traditional social media has, for our whole lives, told us that you're bad in all of the ways you can personally be bad. LinkedIn is telling us all the ways you can be bad and the ways you can be professionally bad. So it's something where it's just
combine the two and you're super bad.
Oh yeah. So it's just a different angle of attack is the dangerous part of it. Yeah.
I see that.
So it depends on your insecurities in a different way, in certain ways, you know?
I could totally see
So
it.
yeah. But all right. Okay. I want to talk now. What I always like to do is ask my guests for a piece of advice that they have, but you guys have a whole podcast about advice. So what I want to ask you guys instead is I want to know your Mount Rushmore of episodes that you would recommend for, and we're going to say early career people, people who are either in college looking to get into career or people who are maybe a couple years in. What would be your Mount Rushmore of these are the episodes, if you can recall them, if not, that's okay, of episodes that you would say these are the ones that you should watch for our Kaila and Kyle's career advice?
This is, I swear, like someone's like, "What's your favorite episode?" I'm like, I can't even
I don't
name
even
one
remember what we
episode.
just recorded
You
on
guys have done
Wednesday.
so many of them. I get it.
I have one, and unfortunately, it is the one that you just mentioned, which is the 4 different types of career you should have.
Mm-hmm.
I think that especially early on, knowing those things or having an opinion on those 4 types of jobs you should have as early as possible will only benefit your career. I really liked the introvert extrovert one. I don't know if that's necessarily like early career or relevant to everybody, not to toot our own horn, but I think understanding how people show up to work is only going to benefit you in your career. Do you have 2 more?
I swear to God that I was going to say the introvert extrovert
Really?
episode before you said it.
I should have let you go first.
Hand on any holy book you want to put my hand on. I swear. I think that one was fun. It's just more philosophical, interesting, different. So I think the personality lens is really helpful. And then I would say from an aspirational perspective, these are the skills that the top 1% of executives use with Cassie Young, who's a partner at Primary Ventures. I found personally to be really interesting. It's a little probably too far for like an early career, but it's nice to know like what you're aiming for. If I had to give 2 pieces of content outside of our podcast, I think the defining decade. I came to this book by Dr. Meg Jay. I came to this book when I was in my 30s, and it's about being in your 20s, so I was a little late. I mean, I wish I'd read it earlier in my life. It, I think, would have given me a more serious approach to things earlier, which I think I could have benefited from. Like, it all worked out, and I'm really happy with where I'm at, and there's a level of lackadaisical that's good, but I was probably a little too lackadaisical.
I would literally never describe you as
If Kaila was like a recovering perfectionist, I was like a needed to maybe care more about things that I don't know. I cared a lot about what I cared about, but I probably should have cared about more things that other people cared about in order to like just get to where I needed to go.
Yeah, but you still got there.
I still got there. It all worked out. Anyway, Defining Decade. It's a great book. Everyone should read it, and read it as soon as possible, because I just think there's a lot of really good lessons in that book. And then the other book I would read is Range by David Epstein, and it's all about how generalists will triumph in a world full of specialists. And I think now more than ever, based on a lot of the conversation we've had today, where people feel like this is a tough market, I just need to like get really good at one thing, or like I just got to put blinders on and really focus on this. I think it gives you this perspective of how widening your aperture and doing stuff like you're doing, Nick, doing the podcast, having these outside hobbies, being interested in a lot of things is actually okay. And in a lot of ways, you might get off to a little slower start because you haven't been focused on mechanical engineering since you're 4 years old. But what the research does suggest is you will end up in a better fit career. And because you're in a better fit career, you will ultimately make more money because you'll be in the environment where your skills shine, and you'll be rewarded by the market for that. And so I think it takes some of the pressure off of feeling like you have to have everything figured out when you're 22 years old. So Defining Decade and Range, I think, are a good yin and yang of what I would want to give to everyone who's in their 20s. Okay. Kayla's like, fucking, you're supposed to plug
I was
us.
about to say, like, I love that you answered the question you wanted to answer.
Yeah. Look, I
It's
worked on
interview
some
skills.
political campaigns, you know?
Sure.
I got it down.
No, the other 2 that I thought of, frankly, while you were speaking was we did one on how to hack your own motivation. And I think especially when you're in entry-level jobs, you might not be doing things that you feel passionate
good
about
point.
100% of the time. And that's like, again, talking about how I'm externally motivated and maybe Kyle's a little more internally motivated. Like, what are some tips and tactics to still be productive even when you're like, I don't want to do this. And on the same vein, we did a podcast with Dr. Lori Santos, who talked about how to be happy at work. The element there that I think is the most useful for early career individuals is job crafting, which is how to find purpose and passion in your job, regardless of what it is. And one example there that she mentioned was janitors. They surveyed janitors, and the janitors who just thought of their job as like cleaning up after people in a hospital, they didn't have as much like satisfaction in their careers. And the janitors that were like, I'm helping people, I'm interacting with patients, I'm making them laugh, I'm like bringing joy to everyone every day, had a much higher rate of job satisfaction. I think, again, especially when you're in the shit doing the stuff that nobody wants to do as an entry level individual, you can feel pretty like bad. And so reaching for those two things, I think, will help.
And just one comment on what Kaila said, because I think it was a really brilliant point, particularly with the job crafting thing. Our generation, Nick, millennials, when we were growing up, we didn't have the get rich in 20-minute YouTube videos. We had, your work has to be something so meaningful and impactful to the world. You are going to change the world. This millennial generation
Why I went into finance.
is going, yeah, Kaila didn't get the message, I guess, is going to cure cancer, is going to create global world peace. If you do anything that isn't that, you're a bad person. Like, you should have so much impact positively on the world. And I think now, as seasoned millennials, one of the things that happened is we realized, like, well, that's not really possible all the time. And what I think that did for some of us is like turn us away from thinking about purpose at all, and almost just being like, well, work is work, and that's fine. And like, I don't need I'll find a purpose outside of work. I think the real answer is somewhere in the middle, which is like, I don't think you have to go work for the United Nations to like make a difference. You don't have to like do something that's so grand, but it doesn't mean that you should work a job where you don't find purpose at all. And I think that's really important. I think if you're viewing your work as like strictly 9 to 5, complete separation between work and life, I don't even care what happens at work. And like, to me, I find that personally to be a sad existence. And I think a real skill is to be able to uncover a purpose in whatever job you're working and feeling connected to, whether it's the mission of the company, the mission of your team, the beauty of the work you're doing. That is what will keep you going. And it doesn't need to be everything in your life, and it shouldn't. But discounting any purpose from the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. to me is really sad. I think you should be able to find some purpose in your career. And I think we were sold that purpose had to be this big grandiose thing, and so we turned away from it, when in reality you can find purpose in a lot of fields. Now, it also, I think, maybe is a good filter for what career you want to go into. And this is what I'm, quite frankly, thinking about a lot more, is like, okay, what is the ultimate impact of what we're doing here? And I do think at Morning Brew Inc., like, we do something that is, lowercase n noble, which is like, we inform people, we educate people, we entertain people. We have so many different franchises. CFO Brew is helping CFOs do their job better. Like, you can find a deep purpose in that. I do think there are some jobs that I would struggle with finding that purpose. And my advice to myself would be like, just don't go down that path, because you're going to find this void eventually, and you're going to want to do something else. Anyway, so finding a fit on purpose, I think, is also really important for successful careers.
All right. Well then, Kyle, thank you so much for ending us on that note. It has been wonderful talking with you both today.
People. There we go.
I had a lot of fun. I hope you both did as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I know you both have places to be, so I won't hold you for too much longer.
Hey, thanks for having us, and I hope you're enjoying your show a ton, and I do genuinely mean this. Like, I really want to commend you. It's not a lot of college students that would have the desire and like actually go and do the thing you're doing, and so I hope you're taking away a lot of lessons from this experience that will serve you for the rest of your career. And I'll go find your LinkedIn message, and I'll respond back now. Yeah.
Great.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you both for being here quite a bit. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you have any thoughts, feedback, guest recommendations, or just want to say hi, shoot me an email at nick@reroutedpod.com. If you like the show, leave a review, give us a follow, like, and subscribe. You can find links to our website and socials in the description below. You can also find the specific Per My Last Email episodes we discussed and where to find the show in general. I'm looking forward to seeing you next time.